I come here to bring you the bad news, of course, from my region. We heard for the past 2 years expressions such as Arab awakening, Arab Spring, which convey a certain sense of optimism about what's happening in our region. And I'm not sure I share this type of feeling. It's true that 4 dictators were gone in Tunisia, in Libya, in Egypt, in Yemen, but there are over 20 Arab countries, and most of other countries continue business as usual. And I would submit to you that most, what we see is a lot of continuities rather than change. I wish we see change. If we see change, it's not always for the better. And what we see in our region is a grand, colossal failure of modernization. Basically, the Arab countries were not successful in producing, modernizing leaders such as Ataturk in Turkey, or type of leaders that we've seen in South Korea or in Taiwan, that push their countries into a modern world, into the 21st century. And in the Arab world, the leaders that are popular are Saddam Hussein's, Arafat's, which maybe have some kind of leadership qualities, but it's not the type of agent that will bring them into modernity. And this is not something new. We know about it for several years. The United Nations, even of all places, published a human development report written by Arab intellectuals already in 2003, in which they noted deficiencies in human rights, deficiencies in economic development, deficiencies in academic achievements. And this situation has not changed, and it continues. And it's quite tragic to see a region that, on many accounts, fares even less well than Africa. So this is the main problem of the Middle East. They are not successful to meet the challenge of modernity. We see another crisis in the Arab world, and this is the crisis of the Arab state. Arab states, with the exception of Egypt, which is a truly historic state, are actually new states. They were born out of the dissolution of the Ottoman Empire about 100 years ago. Aussie troops also participated in this dissolution in Palestine. And those states have failed to create a national identity. Syria, for example, it's a new state. We all know about the civil war in Syria, but we also are fully aware that it's not a war between Syrians and Syrians. It is a war between Alawites and Sunnis. We see old identities being played out in a new battleground, and Syria failed to create a Syrian identity. As European countries, nation states were successful. After the invasion, American invasion of Iraq, we've seen that Iraq is basically disintegrating along sectarian lines, along identity lines. We have a Sunni region, we have a Shiite region. The Shiites are the dominant part, and of course we have a Kurdish region in the north, and there is no Iraqi identity. And all this, of course, is before the Arab Spring. If the Iraqi National Army goes into the Kurdish region, they are being shot at by the Peshmerga, by the Kurdish military. The same thing we've seen in Libya. The most important and politically relevant identities are tribal identities between East and West Libya. And the state, as a result, is developing into a failed state. A failed state is a state that does not have monopoly over use of force. This is an old political Weberian definition. And in Libya, we have militia. And one militia kidnapped the prime minister a week and a half ago, and for the right price, they returned into office, alive.
Alive?
Alive, yeah. Well, they probably want to kidnap him again. They have a good customer. So this is the type of countries, and this is not something new. Somalia was a failed state much before was Arab Spring, with a lot of militias. Lebanon was a failed state because Hezbollah, one militia, is a dominant part in the south, but also has taken more or less the country. And the national Lebanese army, if it goes south, is being shot by Hezbollah. Palestinians have established a failed state. The Palestinians had militias, and one militia, Hamas, took over Gaza. Indeed, they first won elections. No more elections, they had enough elections. And it's ruling part of the Palestinian territories. So we basically see a tremendous problem of the Arab political culture, which does not sustain statehood. Even Egypt has problems in enforcing its sovereignty in Sinai. And now we see quite an attempt, courageous and to some extent effective attempt by the Egyptian military to try to get rid of the jihadists in the Sinai Desert and to destroy the Hamas tunnels. Actually, they are doing a much better job than we did. They don't have a Supreme Court of Justice and, B'Tselem and this type of organizations. So they can be more effective. So we see this is another crisis of the Arab state. The Arab state that is in crisis does not deliver. Part of the awakening is because the people realize, due to the new media, that people elsewhere live much better. And some of them went into the street to demonstrate, which takes a lot of courage. Of course, it's not like demonstrating in Melbourne or demonstrating in New York. In our part of the world, they shoot at demonstrators if they demonstrate against the ruler. And this is indeed a change. We see more courageous people going to the streets, but it's not that contagious. After all, as I mentioned, most Arab states still have their dictators. As a result of the inability of the state to deliver, we see the rise of political Islam. And Islamist groups do deliver services that the state does not deliver. Islamist groups do deliver education, not the type of education I want for my son, for your children, grandchildren, but they do deliver education. They deliver health services. They deliver social services. And as a result of their ability to deliver, they are more popular. Usually they are seen as much more honest than the current dictators. And whenever there is a possibility for an election, they do very well. In some countries, they are the majority. In Tunisia, in Egypt, they was ruled for a year by the Muslim Brotherhood, which was successful in election. In Libya, they are a strong force. And we see Islam being a potent force against the Assad regime. Unfortunately, for the region, political Islam, despite the fact that the slogan is Islam is a solution, they are not the solution. Islamic groups are not an agent for modernization. They are anti-Western, anti-democratic, anti-modern, and they exclude half of the population from political process, from economic involvement, the women. Believe me, I'm not a great feminist. But still, I think that a modern economy cannot function well without having women in the workforce. And if they keep them at home, it's a problem. If the mothers are not able to be subject to modern education and to teach their children how to be modern, it's a big problem for their societies. So we see a crisis of modernization. We see a crisis in the Arab state, which is widespread. And we see the rise of political Islam, which functions maybe well, but is not the solution. All this brings about to a decline of the Arab world. The Arab world, as such, is maybe exiting from history, as one of my colleagues put it. Bernard Lewis speaks about a moribund civilization. I'm not sure it's correct, but we've seen civilizations appear and disappear. You know, as Jews, we have a long memory. Maybe we see that. As a result of the Arab decline, there are other powers that fill in the vacuum in the Middle East. I'm speaking about Turkey and Iran. Turkey and Iran are two countries with an imperial past. Those two countries have ruled the Middle East for centuries. Those two countries are much better equipped to deal with modernization than the Arab countries. And indeed, their economies do much better. Turkey, unfortunately, has chosen the wrong path. Turkey was part of the West, tried to be part of Europe for a variety of reasons. Under the leadership of Erdogan, the current prime minister, the leader of the AKP, proto-Islamic party, has decided to distance Turkey from the West. Turkey, despite the fact it's a NATO member, is not a reliable NATO Western ally. And Turkey, to give you just a few examples, Turkey under Erdogan accepted Ahmadinejad for a visit. That's the only NATO country, only European country, only country that somehow belongs to Europe. It is the only NATO country that accepted Bashir, the butcher from Khartoum, for a state visit. It is a country that voted against the United States at the United Nations Security Council opposing sanctions on Iran. Turkey circumvents international sanctions on Iran. Turkey just recently has bought Chinese equipment for its military. No other country dared to do so. And it, of course, will constitute a lot of problems to NATO structure, this type of equipment. So Turkey is going its own way, trying to influence events, trying to be a leader of the Middle East. The same, of course, is happening in Iran since 1979. Iran underwent a revolution, an Islamic revolution, adopted a very particular, radical Shiite version of Islam, which they are trying to export, and they're trying to attain hegemony in the region. The most dangerous aspect of their ambitions is the quest for nuclear weapons. We are living now in the midst of a campaign, Iranian campaign, of goodwill, of smiles, which is not new. You know, the part of the West is really duped by their policies. We shouldn't forget. Before Ahmadinejad was Khatami. Khatami spoke about dialogue between civilizations. And everybody was happy, oh, we have a new Iran. There is no new Iran. It's the same Iran. An Iran that is intent on attaining the most important thing for them, not a deal with the West, but time. To present the world with a fait accompli, a nuclear bomb, or breakout capability. Meaning that ability to attain, to assemble in a few weeks several nuclear bombs. And they have a chance to be successful. Because the West, the gullible West, wants hope, believes in diplomacy. And some of them really don't care if the Iranian will have a bomb. And they see colleagues in the United States speaking, okay, we can contain a nuclear Iran. I think it's a big mistake. For Iran, a nuclear bomb is an insurance policy for the regime. They understand fully well that a nuclear country is less amenable to regime change. When Bush tried to push democracy into the Middle East, he went to Iraq, he went to Afghanistan of all places, but he stopped at Pakistan. Well, Pakistan is such a great democracy. No, Pakistan has nuclear weapons, and if you are destabilizing a country with nuclear weapons, you don't know who's going to push the button. And they understand, they emulate also the North Koreans. The Iranians are very good at that. So, unfortunately, this issue is continuing to haunt us for a while, and the Iranian issue is very different from all other issues which I spoke about, because it has strategic importance which any other issue, Middle Eastern issue, has. It is Iran, only Iran, that can affect nuclear proliferation. Neither the Palestinians, nor the Syrians, nor the Libyans. Only Iran can determine if there will be nuclear proliferation in the Middle East. Only Iran can determine the price of a strategic commodities such as oil. They are situated along the Gulf. They have a coast at the Caspian Basin. This area, the energy elite, has maybe 70, 75, 80% of the world reserves. No other conflict in the Middle East can affect the price of oil. And they tell me, Iran can sell. Must sell. Yes, they will sell, but they can decide to whom to sell for and for how much. And finally, it is only Iran that can affect international terrorism. No other country has this type of terrorist infrastructure all over the world. And they have branches in Latin America, in North America, in Europe, in Asia. We just heard about Thailand. And I'm sure they have their branches here as well. So Iran is an issue of a different magnitude, of a different order. And it must be dealt with. Israel at this time feels quite alone. And Netanyahu made it quite clear at the UN and also at his speech at my center that he understands the problem. And he adopted maybe a Churchillian opposition, saying quite clearly that if the world doesn't deal with it, Israel will. On this happy note, I'll end.